Today we are going to be raising a pole that's called a house pole for our Wilpgiton. I am reasserting the right of my family to use the eagle and the gnawing beaver crest. The house pole represents this. What many people may not know is that in the late 1800s, there was a law in Canada that prevented all of the tribal groups from passing on tradition and history. There were people who were put in jail, regalia and other things taken away, and that was normal. That was a part of life. But there has been a way that our tribal groups have survived. However, there's also, remember, there's at least 10 generations of people who have not had traditions passed on, and we are reclaiming them. And today, my eagles are reclaiming the right to use this. Normally, I would sing a song of peace and welcome, but I made the decision not to follow that because our family and our voices have been silent so long. I want to honor those years of silence by just drumming. Cam gut. I call Sis's axe. These are the eagle house. Lakskik.
Move back this way. Okay, set it. Okay. Somebody pulled the songs out of the way.
This out of the way, then?
No. We're going to use that. Okay, pull it back a bit. Stand up. Yeah. Slide it back.
I would have grown up in a traditional environment where the stories would be told to me, even from the time I grew up. We are a oral community of people where I would have learned these stories word for word. And the others of my community would have learned the stories too, but I and my eagles would have had the only right to speak them. But because I too am only just learning them, I'm going to speak them from the word so that I get it right. I want to get it right. So the story of Githon is when people were living together in a Haida village, they owned a fishing pool where they would go to catch trout. One time, 3 young men fished trout in the pool. Now remember, this would have been spoken in Somaliac to you. They prepared to roast them. They built a fire at the edge of the water, and once the fish were roasted and ready to eat, they took one and placed it on a skunk cabbage leaf. Now I don't know why they would do that, but they did. No sooner had they begun their meal than a frog leaped upon the leaf and started to eat it. They threw the rest of the fish away. They placed the next fish on the leaf and were ready to resume their meal when another frog jumped upon it. And again they threw the fish away and took up the last that they had roasted. They were about to partake of it when another frog spoiled it for them. Angry about the frog, they threw it into the fire as they'd already done with the others. Then they boarded their canoe and started to paddle away from the pool. And after they had gone some distance, a voice called them, singing mournfully, "You shall not go very far before the man in the bow of the boat drops dead." Shortly after, the voice resumed singing, "Then you will travel a while after the man at the bow of the boat has died. The man in the center shall also die. When the last man at the stern reaches home and has finished telling the other people of the village about what has happened, he shall die too." Before they had proceeded very far, the first man actually died, as predicted. And they reached the halfway to the village. The center man dropped dead, and as soon as the last survivor had reached home, the people came down to meet him. They asked him what had happened to his companions, and at first he refused to tell, knowing that he would no sooner finish speaking that the same thing would befall him. The people pressed him, and he had to explain, then he dropped dead. During the next night, while the tribe was asleep, a huge fireball, much like lightning, struck at the houses and the village burst into flames. The people were destroyed by the fire. Only a young girl, one of the head princesses, was saved. Having just reached the age of young womanhood, she was camping out, secluded in an underground hut surrounded by copper shields. Copper shields are really important to our Northwest Coast tribal groups. When her time to come out had arrived, she found out that the village was burned and every house had been razed to the ground. An old woman came toward the village crying, and on her head was a hat of the Haida type. On its top and all around were brims of frogs, and on her cane were human-like faces and the carving at the top of a large frog. She intoned a dirge, like a mourning song, the frog dirge. A canoe then approached the site of the former village. In it sat 3 people. One of them was a Haida chief on a hunting trip. Finding that the village had disappeared, he stepped ashore to make sure of what he had already observed from a distance. He found the young woman in hiding within the underground hut. He brought her to the canoe and took her to his home village. He later married her and had several children. Then one day her children were mingling with others of the same village, and they were taunted. They learned that this was not the village of their mother, our Tzibjan, our matriarchal society. They were foreigners here. This disclosure of her secret to her children made their mother unhappy. She called her family together, and this is what happened. After the young woman from the village that was destroyed had married the Haida chief, the people captured an eagle and tamed it. Above its talons they had put copper bracelets. As ornaments, the eagle would sail away for 1 day or 2 days, then come back to its adopted home. Then one day it flew away and never returned. The children who had been taunted regretted the loss of their pet. Because of the taunt, their mother decided to go away with them, and before departing, they sang a hunting song, Haiwa Hai Ho Ho, and they paddled away while singing the dirge, Ye La Ye Awa. While they were still singing their mournful song out on the waters, they saw a thick fog drop over them. Then they intoned another dirge while weeping, for they were lost at sea. But before they had finished, an eagle swooped down and alighted in their canoe. They recognized the copper bands at its feet and knew that their pet had come back to guide them, for it looked in one direction. After they had paddled a long time, they beheld land ahead. The eagle then flew away. They became aware that they had come to Gitamat, south of the Skeena River, where they landed and traveled on foot northwards toward the Skeena, the river of mists. That's why this house of the Gitzilas Canyon claimed that the land is theirs to the individual property, and their rights have been acknowledged by that tribe. And it's also why we claim to be of the Eagle Clan. We claim also the right to use and use the gnawing beaver as part of our, this part of the pole on top is the eagle, which is our clan. And he sits on the gnawing beaver. The people were then afraid to live in their village, and those who stayed on went to the other side of the river. It changed the main place where the Gitzilas people stayed. They just didn't want to be around it anymore. But it acknowledges that the Lakskik of the Gitzilas have the right to the gnawing beaver. I hope that it gives opportunity for all of us to know that as new as this is to you, it is also new to my family. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for witnessing the raising of our house pole and establishing again with our family. And truly, that is my heart's desire. There have been so many things that have happened in our communities that are divisive. They divide, and they're meant to hurt, and they're meant to harm. And I wanted to do something that was meant to build. Not just build within our community of Eagles, but build so that we knew who we were. To be Lakskik, to me, means to be a person who makes a difference. And I can attest to each one of my family members, every Eagle standing before you, that in work and at home with their families, they truly have in every way made a difference. And they are worth and worthy to be called Lakskik. So thank you so much for coming.
I am the son of Nishaiwas and Achli Allah. My Giksanima name is Sispigot. My Kwakwala name of honor is Guayam. My English name is Glenwood. I had the honor of carving this pole for Celine. This pole, first you have to hear about how it started. A few times she came to Vancouver and we got together and we visited, and we talked about how her dad used to be a canoe builder. So we got this idea that if she got a log, I'd come up, we'd build a canoe with her dad. I don't know how building a canoe with her dad turned into 2 totem poles and a canoe. I don't know how that happened. I haven't asked yet. But anyways, I get a phone call one day, and this is after telling her not to get the wood in the summertime because Kelowna is so hot and dry. I get this call that she got the wood, 3 logs dropped off into her dad's yard when he lived across the street. And I go, I thought I told you not to get it in the summertime. She said, well, I got it. It's there. So I had to drop what I was doing and come up and take the back off of 2 of the logs to prep them for a pole, round them off and hollow them out, and then move them over into the garage and wait until the house was finished before we could occupy the house and work on the poles in the garage. So that comes about. And we got together whenever she was available and whenever I was available. And this started in August 2009. This is 6 years later to get to this point. It's been a long trip. Also along the way, there were a few people who helped. This is normally not done because this is not my due, not my event, but I feel compelled to thank them. Blaine. Jim. We're not done yet. But 2 buckets. Blaine, phone calls. Jim, encouragement. And he said that he was going to make sure I got a tip. We haven't seen that, but that's okay. It's the thought that counts. Negan. For brownies. Timo. For photography. Young Master David. Now this fellow, he was probably one of the very first people that I met while working on the pole. And he was probably the most entertaining. I was working on the pole and I was bent over the pole and I was working away on it, and he came in and he was watching me. And I knew what was going on in his mind because he bent right over, got down like this, and he was making eye contact with me while I was bent over, and he was bent right over to make sure that I seen him, right? And he told me, he said, I have carved soapstone, you know? So it was pretty obvious that he wanted to work on the pole. But I told him that the tools were very sharp and you have to be experienced. He seemed to think that was okay. He didn't pursue it any farther, but the thought was still there. And before I gave him this gift, when I give it to him, I want him to open it in front of you and read what is written inside.
Looking at Indian art of the Northwest Coast. To young Master David, you had expressed an interest in coming on the pole.
Carving on the pole.
Carving on the pole. Before you can do that, you must start at the beginning. You must learn designs. This book will introduce you with basic instructions to understanding design. Please enjoy. Sincerely, Glenn. August 15th.
That's today. This one may be the last one, but not the least one. This one's for Selena. The other thing you should know about this pole is that normally when it's done, the family gets together, they all contribute to the purchasing of the log, the hiring of the carver, the feast, everything, from beginning to end. It's a family event in that sense, right? Everybody contributes. This lady here, she did it all herself. She got the logs. She hired the carver. She did it traditionally in the sense that she provided me with a place to stay and a place to work. And she has invited all of you. She has done this at her own time and expense. She is it. The pole itself, just to let you know, we should have had some people take a look at this when we first moved it around, but there were 16 knots in this pole when I hollowed it out. Her dad selected the wood, He is not a totem pole carver, he's a canoe builder. But as an artist, you have to work with what you're given, but I like it. In closing, I would like to say, Giri Kanish, Inoyakson, Hawa, Gila Kasla, Klakwo, and Heichka. It's Kliket, Timsian, Haida, Kwakwala, West Coast, Coast Salish. That's thank you in all those languages.
It is also tradition for me to offer a gift of thank you. And there are a couple of people who I'm going to be calling by name, and then I'm going to be asking my Eagle family to pass out the gifts to everyone else. The people who helped in the preparation and the carrying of the log are the ones that I will be calling out.
The other thing about this is the feeding of the people is a way of paying the people for witnessing this event. Enjoy it.
So, Brian, where are you? I've asked Brian to close the ceremony in a prayer, and with a prayer, and then I'm going to be asking my family to hand out gifts. So, Brian.
You're here because you're special to Selena. I know about your journey, but Eve and I have known Selena for over 30 years, and we were delighted when we moved to Kelowna that she was here ahead of us, and so we could continue our friendship here. This is the culmination of a dream. A few years ago, about 5, 6 years. This 8, 9. Is my hair gray then? This home was built with the dream of a pole. Here it is. So we celebrate with you and we thank you for inviting us. Some of the words that were shared in the garage were peace and cleansing. Here comes Peter.
Hello. I want to thank everybody. Guys, Spanish music. That's all of you. So I said there's not.
Do you want to have a seat here?
You too.
Here. Right here. Peter, here. You sit right here. Yeah, you sit right here. Let's pray together. Thank you, dear God, for your faithfulness to us. Thank you for the story that we've heard, and thank you for your faithfulness through all the generations to Peter and Selena and all of her family. Thank you that you are the one who gives peace. You are the Prince of Peace, and that peace is offered to everyone here. Thank you for this celebration. May you continue to watch over Selena. May you continue to bless her with wisdom and discernment and insight that comes from on high. Bless the things and the people that she touches. And God, may you receive great glory through her life. We think of Peter too, and we bless him and thank you for him. May we celebrate together and enjoy the goodness of the Lord, in whose name we pray. Amen.
92.
Huh?
You're 92.
92.
So, Glenn said I'm supposed to open this and lift it up. So you all get to see.
Daddy wants
right.
to see it.
And you got a T-shirt.
Yep.
No, I'm not that commercial.
Winifred.
I should speak my own language.
Jim. Lee. Jill. Kara. Christine. Leslie Ann. Angela. Keith. Meg. Jeff. Bogdan. Claudia.